Alrighty, we're going to conclude the mods on the carburetor here of the Kawasaki KL250 Super Sherpa. We're going to put in a new primary jet, main jet, and a new pilot jet. This is a 132.5 main jet, and this is a 120 pilot versus the originals, which are considerably leaner. Here's the underside of the carburetor where the jets are located. You remove the fuel bowl to get at them. And incidentally, I mentioned in my earlier video that the screws that hold this puppy onto the carburetor body are very easy to chew up. You can see, hopefully if I can get this thing to focus, you can see how my originals are chewed up. So I went down to the hardware store and got these neat little hex head ones. Here's the hex head tool, which are much more, well, much less prone to being chewed up, and they're also easier to get at. Once the carburetor is back on the bike, because of clearance, you can use this little tool to get at them, and it makes if you ever want to get at the underside of the carburetor to do any adjustments, it makes it a heck of a lot easier. All right, so the main jet is very straightforward, very simple. You simply unscrew it, take it out. Now there's a little metal washer underneath there. You want to be sure that you don't drop that or lose that. Let's put the original way over here, and then we'll put our main jet in. I always like to start these by hand. It's all fasteners just to make sure that nothing gets screwed up. And then, well, this is probably a little bit too small. Let me find a screwdriver that's appropriately sized. Again, you want to avoid chewing stuff up. Tighten it down, not too tight. Remember, it's aluminum. Now, when you're trying to remove the pilot, you can see this is a really small little dude. Fine threads also. You want to use a screwdriver that fits that slot. Narrow screwdriver like this, and again, these are easy to pick up at Harbor Freight or Sears or anywhere, but don't use an improperly sized screwdriver or you might have issues. Once it's loose, I've already loosened the original one in here. It's down in this well, so I use a pair of tweezers to reach in there and pull that little sucker out. Pull them out and set them aside there. Easy peasy. You take your new one, and same thing, you just kind of settle them in there, and you screw them down like that. Not too tight. There he is. He's installed. And final step, you want to reinstall your bowl. Now I cleaned this while I had it apart. This bike had been sitting for some time. As you can see, it's a little bit rough looking, and this was filled with nastiness, so I went ahead and gave that a thorough cleaning. You'll notice the gasket and the underside of it is shaped one way so that it really only fits one way. It's pretty much impossible to not install this correctly. And then you just slip it on thusly. You take your fasteners and you put them in. Again, I always like to start my threads by hand. Some guys wear gloves. I always like to do it by hand like this without anything between them, just because of the feel. You get a much better sense of the threads correctly getting in there or not, and you don't want to cross-thread anything, particularly with aluminum. You know, it's a big debacle if you cross-thread, screw something up. So we get them going. And I lightly seat them first. This is probably overkill for something like this. It's not really a critical area, but I like the gaskets to seat properly. So once they're lightly seated, then I tighten them in a crosshatch pattern. So I'm going to go diagonally like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'll check them again just to make sure everything's nice and tight. Again, don't get overeager with these aluminum parts. They're easy to warp, and then once they're warped, they won't seal, and you got a mess. All right, now put this down so I can get my carburetor out. By the way, the vise was not on there tight, just enough to keep it in position so I could work on it. And there we go. There's the Mikuni carburetor ready to reinstall on the Sherpa, and we will be doing that shortly. And also in the next video that I'm going to make, I'm going to be putting in the new shims for for the valve clearance. There's the two shims that I got down at the Kawasaki store that are one down from what I have originally in the bike. And anyway, we'll put that in the next video. In the next video, we'll show that. Then we'll have the bike back together, and then with fingers crossed, we'll see if the thing starts. So tune in next time.